for board members to keep looking and reviewing policies, because things,
wrong, so no problem.
yeah, thank you. All right, so the next conversation is around safe zones. I want to open the conversation here. This is also suggested to be on the table for 30 days for tomorrow, for us to vote for it to be on the table for 30 days, again, for more community feedback and for board feedback. But this is here a suggestion, and if there's anyone, we can open the floor around conversations here. While you are reviewing, I also want to share that I'm going to be continuing, as I have my meetings with Dr. Taylor, sharing the communications with our board members. I think it's really important to make sure that there's transparency around my communications and my meetings with Dr. Taylor, and I really want the board members to also have an opportunity to know what we're talking about and to provide any questions, any feedback, any suggestions. If there's clarifications that need to be made, I also open it for our system to make those clarifications, and for our board members to also ask questions and get clarifications. Certainly, I want to make sure that the communications are transparent, that they're honest, there's no misrepresentation around data or information. I want to be as open as possible around these discussions, and also in partnership with the vice chair as well with our briefings with the system. I think that's also going to be helpful with just making sure we're leading in a way where our board members have voice, and if they have questions, they can certainly ask the questions for clarification, and I think that's important. So I do want to just share that I'm committed to that, and anything that may need more clarification, I'm open to feedback, questions, and even input from our school system to help support the clarifications that are needed. I do appreciate my conversations this week, Knudsen and Gasper, and look forward to continuously one-on-one conversations to make sure there is clarity around communications that are being sent, because I do think it's important that it's not just one board member. I'm one person. Just because I am chair, it doesn't mean that my one have any more power than anyone else. It's just managing the meetings, but really we all have the equal voice and equal vote. So I just want to uplift that.
Can I ask a question around this policy JBCF?
The safe zones?
Yeah, where
Okay.
did this come from? Was it developed by the district? Was it suggested by, but what, I mean, we have a policy committee. I don't remember hearing that this graced the walls, meeting space of the policy committee. I'm just wondering where this came from.
Yeah, that's a great question. So one is a couple of responses there. One is the Safe Zones policy is a templated policy that was sent from the National Education Association, where it's a best practice that they're suggesting for many school systems to use to ensure that schools create a safe space for students, in particular in response to the current environment and climate, where students and their families are experiencing a lot of fear around their safety and their need for supports. And so the National Education Association shared this, and then I sent it to our school system. I sent a link to the NEA policy to provide it to our school system to use to review. I also sent some additional suggestions, particularly around the birthright citizenship, and that was something that came from some community members. And this is again, an opportunity for us to use this template and for you all, board members, to review, and also community members to provide more comment. And I'm hopeful that we can get more student voice in this policy and commenting on it when it lays on the table for 30 days, get more families and teachers to also provide comments, and even our counselors. I think that's the advantage, because I think we need more feedback on this, honestly, I think. So I'm committed to ensuring that we can get more, in particular, more student voice in this.
Are you referring to the same NEA that called our colleague, Mr. Gasper, and his friends domestic terrorists in 2021? Are you referring to the same NEA that our Georgia School Board Association pulled out of membership around that time and joined another national organization? I'm not sure the NEA is the place I'm going first and foremost for policy, but I also want to just raise the idea that it looks very redundant, and I don't understand the implementation. So I won't be able to support putting this on the table for 30 days. I don't think that's the next right step. I think the next right step is to truly have some input from the district, who has to figure out how to implement this, to talk to building leaders. And again, for almost every bullet point that's listed here, we already deal with these issues in many of our other policies that are already in place. So I, instead of adding another policy, would rather get an update from the district in terms of where we might, if we need to, strengthen some of these other policies. Because I think the impetus right now is around a question that we can't even ask legally. So in terms of immigration, legal or illegal, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we educate kids that come to our schools with the right information, address, age. And I verified with Mr. Pereira. I mean, it's literally against the law for us to ask for that information from a student, right? So I would rather not find ways to highlight people who are potentially in that and still, showing the fortitude to continue their education in our schools. I'd rather see if we could find some ways to, again, I want system feedback before I just throw this on the table to be voted on 30 days from now.
So my comment here is, you had another question, and I wanted to answer that as well, Mr. Knudsen, around the policy committee. We're going to have training this weekend to go over things that there are best practices around what goes through the policy committee, and many of those elements are considered around timing, as well as whether it's governance related or not. If it's governance related, that's board work, that's policy work that we do as a governance team versus going through the policy committee. I certainly support the use of our policy committee, which are community members that each of us appointed to this committee from our various districts. And I support certainly the calendar that they've already created for the year. And the calendar is already set for some of the items that they've prioritized based on the conversations that they've had as a team. So I just wanted to answer that question, because I remembered that was one of their questions there. But then my other comment around the safe zones is, we are undoubtedly in a time where there is fear around children attending schools. We've seen across the nation children being afraid to go into schools, and high absenteeism from, in particular, families and children who have immigrant families, having fear around attending schools. We've seen it where students have ran at the bus stop away from ICE agents and the trauma associated with ICE activity in their communities, nearby their schools, their playgrounds, different facilities that are associated or near our schools. And the Safe Zones policy helps to support creating a safe space for our children, not just physically, but emotionally, And the hope is that it would improve absenteeism, and it will also indicate our strong support for our students, their psychological safety. And many of them are suffering from just the terror, and also just the physical safety. I know we have a letter that already includes language from the NEA. The letter we have provided guidance to our principals that has the exact language or summarized language from the NEA policy to support our students and their safety. This is a suggestion around codifying that letter in a policy and allowing for feedback from community members and our board. And there is also a facility is being, it's almost done, an ICE facility, ICE detention facility, that many of our community members are afraid of. Gwinnett County is one of the most diverse counties in the nation, and I know there's this saying around, well, why call attention to it? They already know. They're here. The ICE facility is built very near here. There's a reason why it's being built here. It was selected to be built here. We want to make sure that our children know that they are safe and know that they belong, and we can do everything we can in our power to do that, to support their needs, psychological safety as well as physical safety.
Can we hear from the district around implications of the proposed policy? Any thoughts, concerns, feedback? Because this is a new policy. We haven't discussed this previously, so I would like to hear from the district on this proposed policy.
Yeah, so I think we were able to initially, when we got a copy of this, if you remember, I sent an email. We were able to work with the one or two division or departments within divisions that would take point in implementing the policy, or maybe a way, as you said, operationalizing the policy. I send that feedback to you, and there were certain concerns surrounding, bear with me here.
While you're looking at that, can you also share Dr. Stone's questions and also my comments as well? Ms. Stone.
Yes, there was a lot of feedback going back and forth, and so if you remember, some of you did it blue, green, red. It's all here, so it's not as easy. But there was feedback about who the capacity of the counselors, ability to take on one more task, specifically in counseling students with fear. I always remind us that we don't do clinical counseling, that our counselors don't do one-to-one therapy, that they do either a group format, where sometimes they can establish a group, or they send out information to the families so that families can have some clinical connections. We do have some resources that we're using now under some of the mental health grants that may be more aligned to that thought of a one-to-one therapeutic environment. But as a whole, our counselors, don't provide therapy. Does that make sense? The other couple of concerns was the cost associated with the training, the types of training that were requested. So our operational or our capacity to implement that section in the policy that talks about training and compliance, that was the original feedback that was received, right? There are different ways to approach this. One of the feedback began with some context that I thought was very good to read, and that was the context that basically stated how we currently enroll students. Again, we enroll students based on the information they provide. A student to be enrolled simply has to establish residency in the county. In establishing residency in the county, we don't request any immigration information. The privacy rules, which are governed by FERPA, have been in place since I've been an educator. So there are many ways to deal with a policy. One way is to have a standalone policy. One way is to ingrain some of this into a policy, to another policy. while this is the model and we were waiting for a decision to whether it's going to be on the table or not, my next step was to take this and frame it a little different for consideration, right? And take a look at what links are already out there for your consideration. But the main concern that came back, and I know I'm repeating myself, came about operationalizing that compliance and training component.
And I know we've had some questions, and I also kind of did my own research, and asked around related to how our school system or our teachers and counselors can support our students. And essentially, the feedback I received was that they are already supporting children who are dealing with fear around ICE immigration issues. And so they're working through it the best way they can. They would appreciate guidance around that. Some of the suggestions was doing a train-the-trainer model that might help reduce costs to help provide guidance to teachers and counselors if a student comes in or have chronic absenteeism. They can reach out and figure out what's going on, but really providing the supports that are necessary and having guidance around that. Another perspective I received was the core issues that some of the students are experiencing may be trauma that is something that our counselors navigate through and they deal with and they refer out and they kind of work through that currently already. It could be bereavement, loss of a family member, or issues that's related to, family separation. That those are issues that they're already dealing with and they work with. Whether it's in small groups or individual, that's already happening. I think the guidance is not just about ICE, but these are some common core concerns that they're already dealing with and working with the students, but there is a need for more guidance. And the letter is a letter that you already sent out that provided guidance around what to do, but I think their request is kind of understanding more around how to engage students specifically in a legal way, in a way that like supports their needs, like what is the guidance and best practice around that, and they're willing. Again, this is a small subset, just trying to understand, but.
So we can always retweak the language. I think the staff was reacting to the language that was currently in the model, which called for an annual staff training. So when you have that, that would be like what we do with our annual training on suicide awareness. We already have about 3-4 hours of every year. Everybody has to receive this annual training. So some of the concerns, doesn't mean we can't tweak the language there or find a better way, but the staff was reacting to the model as it is. And again, the concern with the model as it is basically operationalizing that component of training and compliance, right? Most of the other part of the policy are things that we're already doing or not doing. In other words, we're not asking for immigration data. So the rest of the policy is already in alignment with the work that we're doing. It was just that section.
Mr. Gomez, thank you so much for that insight. I would like to ask, because I printed it out, received your email with the safety zones policy draft, as well as the procedures, as well as the justification and education. Is there a way that we can provide a paper copy for the full board? Because what we've been provided is just a safety zones policy. We don't have a copy. The copy that I have of the procedures is what I printed from my email.
So the procedure is not something that we developed. That procedure was attached to that. So the district has not developed a procedure. I think that Dr. Therese had provided that as a possible example for consideration. But if the policy is passed and we have to operationalize a procedure, we may or may not go to that model. We would have to operationalize this policy in our procedures. So all that information that you received digitally came from, I want to say Dr. Therese has sent that out as possible exemplars. But that wasn't worked on by the district.
Okay, thank you. I think it's important for us to still all have a paper copy of it because it outlines and aligns with the policy that we have in front of us and strategically how it would be implemented.
Okay.
All right, thank you. My last thing I want to say, I don't know if this is the time where we go in and talk about our edits and annotations, but I had the opportunity to meet with some of our school leaders in District 1 and really appreciate their hard work. They sent me a ton of documents, and I have some edits for the policy, and I can send them over on email with the board. But again, I don't know how much time we have. It's 8:02.
Yeah, I think that's the value of us giving direction to the system, is it being a decision that the board needs to make around, are we going to lay it on the table or not? And if we are going to lay it on the table, I think we can, of course, we can still add those edits and comments. And if it's not ready then it'll still be on the table. But I think it's just the opportunity to have it on the table, so then the system is directed to then develop more the policies, edit the policies, the procedures, and for additional community feedback and board feedback.
Okay, perfect. Well, I support laying it on the table.
I do too. Thank you. There are no.
I'm just I'm still wondering if this policy is truly even necessary. And I kind of sit from the position that I, fully support the well-being of our students and, want truly nothing but the best for them. But I look at this policy and I look at it as somewhat of a regurgitation of a lot of policies that we already have in place. And then I look at the genesis of the structure of this policy coming from a far-left organization that promotes gender ideology, gender-affirming care, something that I personally can't support. So I think this policy needs to be looked at also through the lens of a legal perspective. And if we start labeling a policy such as with the words safe zones, are we getting ourselves into trouble? Are we protecting something we shouldn't be protecting? These are just things that are going through my mind, and I struggle with that. If we want to create a process and create instructions for our schools to help our teachers help our students, I think we can easily do that. I saw a wonderful email that Chief Nebo created around Ramadan that went out to all the principals, very detailed. I think we can certainly do that in this situation. Our teachers want to help. Our teachers want to do amazing things. And I think in this situation, trust me, I know the temperature is hot in our country. I know Homeland Security wants to build an ICE detention center in Gwinnett County. I know the temperature is hot. But I also know that our teachers love our students, and with a little direction, our teachers are going to do wonderful things. And I think building a policy to try to operationalize this process that could potentially create other issues down the road is where my head is going, could somewhat be problematic. And so I really am cautioned in moving forward at all with this policy for those reasons. Obviously, I'm one of 5. We still have to take a vote tomorrow night, but those are my comments and sentiments around that. This is kind of timely, coming around the anti-ICE protests that are happening around on our campuses in recent weeks, which I don't agree with either, although I'll be the first to tell you that I support the First Amendment and support the right to protest, but just not on our campus during school hours. This is, again, kind of timely, and I think it lays time to pause and reflect, is this something that we really want to push forward with? So those are my thoughts.
I support putting a policy on the table for 30 days. I do want to uplift this idea of the therapy that's highlighted in the policy, and that schools will activate counseling and student support responses when students are impacted. That is one of the, I guess, implications that's top of mind for me, because that could be realized, especially with the building of development here in Gwinnett County. We could see the number of students impacted rise fairly quickly. So I am thinking about how much that could potentially cost us. I do want us to make sure that when we're considering this policy, we're thinking about the financial implications that come along with it, and what can our district actually support from a financial standpoint, as well as if we don't provide the one-on-one therapy, you're saying we don't do that currently, what might that workaround be? What would that wraparound service be? What would we do in place of providing that one-to-one therapy? I just want to make sure that we are not positioning ourselves in a way where we may incur an astronomical amount of expenses related to this that we weren't anticipating because of what could happen. None of us want it to happen, but it could. We don't know what some of the consequences might be with the development that's currently taking place and how many families could be impacted. I want us to be sure that what we pass in our policy is something that we can fully support, both now and in the future. So that's where my concern lies primarily.
And I know we have, it's 8:08 now, but I do want to share that when we talk about belonging, we talk about safety, that we must do all we can to ensure that each and every child feels safe in our schools. And thinking about ways and how we can creatively engage community organizations like NAMI. I did send an email with some suggestions related to cost avoidance and how that can possibly be realized through community partnerships, through volunteers, through therapists who are certainly committed to helping to support children who are experiencing this, and how do we really leverage the talents and the expertise of community volunteers who have experience around dealing with traumas, bereavement, and things that may be specifically related to this. In terms of training, there are also some other things that I provided as suggestions to consider, but obviously this is suggestions to me for us to consider, to do all we can and anything we can to make sure that we're meeting the needs of each and every child, and make sure that our students, in particular community members in District 5, I've heard from many of them, and some of them have already been detained and returned to school. And principals and teachers are having to deal with students who've already been detained and families, and they returned. But there are some serious concerns around, how do we make sure that they too do feel like there's a safe space for them to be. And this is really important. This policy is really important for us to do that. And I also know that it needs to be successfully implemented. And hearing from you all is really important, because execution at the end of the day is important. And one of the things that I know, because of time, I wanted to talk about implementation policy later, and we can have other discussions around that. But there is, to me, a need for that to also include impacts around financial that can help us understand. But I would say we need to do all we can, and let's think about some creative ways on how we can do all we can to meet the needs of those kids.
So why wouldn't we
I'm
take,
sorry.
yeah, just one last. So why wouldn't we take the time to get system input before we put it on the, I mean, we put something on the table and we come back, we get input, we change it, then we're going to put it on the, I mean, the reason you put something on the table is you're ready. I haven't heard any feedback from the system in terms of what my concerns are. So I'm not sure why we're throwing it on the table when they need the opportunity to respond. Implementation is key here. If we create something that can't be implemented, what does that say? If we create something that costs too much money and we get halfway, what does that say? I mean, we need I need system input and really their recommendation that this is how we're supposed to, because we already have safe schools. We already have those policies in place. Are we going to pass a new policy every time something happens at the federal level that we don't like or whatever? I mean, again, like I said, I think this is fairly redundant, but if there is a way to, I want the school district who has the responsibility of operationalizing this policy to weigh in before we go to the community, because we're asking for input from the community out of context potentially with what it's actually going to look like at the end of the day.
Many of the concepts that we are highlighting here in the policy is already included in the letter of guidance. Not all, but some of them are, because that's you all use the NEA for guidance around the letter that the school system was sent. Am I correct? Right?
You mean,
It was AAASA? AAASA, sorry. So AASA.
so may
That
I
letter.
offer maybe a possible compromise, just in that maybe if we agree, I'm asking, I'm not dictating, I'm asking, if we agree to lay on the table, could we work on it for a month and agree to lay it on the table in March? That gives us a little bit more time to go deeper into it and be able to provide you guys some more of the operational context around this. Just an idea. Doesn't mean anybody has to follow it, but just an idea.
I think because of the urgency of the matter, I would, and because we already have some guidance related to this work that you all already have sent to principals, I think that if you all can work on it, if it's laid on the table, then it gives us the opportunity to vote on it. However, if it's not ready, then it also gives us the opportunity, which we've done before, to keep it on the table. We just recently did that with the MLL policy. I'm sorry, was it the MLL policy?
Yeah.
It was right, where we passed it, there were more edits, or we didn't vote on a policy because it wasn't ready, because the system was still figuring things out, and it wasn't ready. And we did not take action on it. So I think at least having it where it's still accessible for the system to work on, for board members to provide feedback, and the community to provide feedback, I think is a good medium. And if it's not ready by then, the board can certainly decide not to pass it and wait on it.
Can you help us understand the urgency behind this? I guess the speed that it needs to hit the policy Rolodex? I'm at a loss because we don't have the operationalized component of it. I still want to get a legal perspective. And I guess I'm not seeing where the speed is, because we got to get it right. If
I
this
agree.
is what we want to do, we have to get it right. So is there an option to pump the brakes a little bit and say, hey, let's just hold on this. Let's let the district do the work that they need to do. There's a lot of good conversation, a lot of good dialogue, a lot of good questions. George is taking a lot of notes up there. I saw it. I know Mr. Perez is taking a lot of notes back there as well. Is there an option to pump the brakes a little bit and say, let's just hold on to this for maybe 30 days, let the district do their work, and then come back to the board during a work session and say, here's the data that we have. Here's what we here's how we can roll this out from an operational perspective, and then make a decision?
I see that as that's what we're doing, actually. So in
No,
in
you're-
my
you
in my
wanna come to the board
perspective-
tomorrow night
in my
and take a vote.
perspective- In my perspective, when we lay a policy on the table, which we've done before, and I've been here for 6 years, we've had policies that we've laid on the table. We've worked on them when they're on the table as a board, and the system has worked on them. And if it was at the approval of the board by the time we voted on it, we supported it. The system will email us their edits, their operational suggestions, their procedures, if possible, if that's what the board wants. And then the board can work on providing feedback during those 30 days. I think there is urgency around this, considering, and again, I want to back up and say, the time that it's laying on the table for 30 days allows our community to engage with this policy as well. And if it is ready in 30 days, it can pass. And the timing of that will coincide with social circle, will coincide with things that are happening out in the community around this facility that is being built not far from here. And the urgency is there. So, and I'm hearing this from community members, in particular in the area in District 5, where there's a high population of immigrants. Not all of the immigrants are Hispanic, Latino people. They're immigrants from all backgrounds. But there's a high population of immigrants who have fear around this, and there is urgency around it. If we can work on it at the same time, so I do agree with you with allowing the system to provide feedback and engage with the policy. I think they can still do that. And the timing of it being on the table with the urgency that's related to that can allow us to be able to work on it and pass something that I think everyone, in particular our students and their families and our teachers, can feel supported in this process at this time of urgency. If it is not ready in 30 days, like we have done before, we have discussion, we see the emails that you all send if things aren't right with the implementation. We work through that as a board, and I continue to encourage us to do that. And I also support, if the policy isn't ready, then we lay it on the table. It continues to stay there, but it allows us to be able to, if it is ready, and hopefully it will be, act with some urgency around this, doing the timing.
Well, I am all for the community providing feedback, so I think that's a good opportunity as well for everyone in the community to take action on this and give us their input.
Thank you. If there are no further comments, I ask our board members if we can adjourn our meeting.
Madam Chair, if I could, just one matter I needed a little bit of feedback on. I know it's of some urgency with regard to our superintendent background checks. I'd sent an email out. I just want to get a general consensus that the board is okay to proceed with. My recommendation was to go with prescient, which was the first proposal that I sent to you for a sort of tier 1 background check. If you're okay with that, I will move forward with that tomorrow.
Thank you. I responded via email as well. And I want to say thank you so much for the ALMA group and your work on the need for us as a board in the superintendent search process to be able to make sure that we are doing extensive background checks that's beyond and above the standard. And so there is a cost associated with this for the candidates who are in the semifinal round. And so I think that's, or who we're interviewing. And so I want to make sure that the board members are approval of the background checks. Basically, it's more extensive background check with the firm that they've already vetted. And they just need to make sure we're okay with that so they can proceed. So that when we do our interviews, we'll already have that data available to us while we're doing our interviews. And I think that's really important as we are in the next phase of the process, that we're looking at that data.
And I don't need a formal vote. I just wanted to make sure there was no objections to that. If there's no objections to that, then I'll go ahead and proceed with that course of action.
I support your recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you all, board members, and our staff, and Dr. Taylor, and everyone. Have a good night. Thanks.